Have you ever thought about doing an enema? I remember when that was an intimidating idea to me, and it wasn't until I understood the benefits that I decided to give it a try, and I'm really glad I did because this is one of the tools that I would classify as game-changing in my healing journey. So, what is an enema? Well, you have this bucket and a hose, and the bucket obviously gets filled with liquid, and this then goes up your butt. And so then that liquid goes into your colon. And initially I thought that it was more of a gut cleansing thing, which in itself would be a benefit, but it actually turns out that it has an impact on your liver, depending what you put in it. And what really surprised me was how much it impacted my mental health. I did not expect that, but I've actually been able to curb anxiety attacks and bouts of depression by doing an enema. Even brain fog. Brain fog was probably the first thing that I noticed. So if you deal with these things, it might be worth a shot. And if you do, quote unquote, magically feel better after doing the enema, then you'll know that the mental issues that you're dealing with aren't necessarily originating from your mind, but they may be originating from your gut. So let's talk a little bit about the logistics, I guess, of how an enema works. So like I showed you, there's the bucket, which you fill with water. Once you get used to doing it, you can do a whole quart. So I use these mason jars as my gauge, and you want it to be about body temperature water or liquid. Ideally you want to use distilled water. So I did wind up buying a distiller, and I'm glad that I did because it has been much more economical than buying distilled water, and plus I didn't want to buy distilled water that was in plastic jugs. I did try distilling my own water on the stove, and it was so time consuming that I decided to get the water distiller, and it has saved me tons of time. I have made gallons and gallons of distilled water in it, and it works great. I will post a link to everything in the blog post. So for basics, just to try it out, you might start with just distilled water just to see how it feels. And especially if you're reactive to different things, then it might be best just to start with distilled water. Now with this hose, it's a silicone, so it has a little bit of friction to it. The tip less so than the actual hose, but still it's good to maybe put a little, I just put oil on the end, honestly. Makes it easier to insert. You also have this little stopper valve, so it doesn't just go spraying everywhere, although I still occasionally forget to close that and water goes spraying everywhere. But you just turn it that way so the water flows through, or turn it that way to stop it from flowing through. Normally I hang mine pretty high so it goes pretty quickly. The lower you hang it, then the slower it'll go. I almost forgot to mention a very important part. So when you're doing the enema, you're going to want to be laying on your back or on your left side, and that is for general cleansing, but you'll be laying on your right side if it's for the liver. So depending on what your goals are, that will determine which side that you lay on. Now I don't know how scientific that is. There's just different guidelines on it. So I just try the different sides and I do whatever is most comfortable. Usually the next step up from just distilled water would be to do a coffee enema. I was really nervous to do that because me and caffeine didn't get along very well for some 20 years. But I was surprised that even when I did the coffee enema, I had no effect from it. Now, why coffee? Because the compounds in the coffee help to cleanse your liver, to stimulate bile production and glutathione production. And you don't want to use just any coffee. It has to be coffee made specifically for this purpose. That way you don't introduce mold or other toxins into your body. So other things that I have put in my enemas before have been tudka, Japanese knotweed, milk thistle, burdock, calendula, a variety of herbs. There's some you want to stay away from. I recommend you do some research on that because you don't want to irritate anything. I've also put binders in there, like the biotoxin binder. It's a capsule. Just open that up, put that in there. I also have the carboxy. I sometimes put that in there. Some of the herbs that I mentioned, if I have like the powder in the capsules, I'll just go ahead and dump that into the water. But if it's like something chunky, like the cut and sifted herbs, then I will go ahead and make like a tea out of those first and then just strain it and just use the water from it. That way it doesn't clog the hose. When you first start doing it, you may not be able to hold it that long. You do want to make sure that you are near the toilet at all times when you're doing an enema. Then you want to work your way up to about 15 minutes or so. Normally you can work your way up to that pretty quickly. Once I'm done, I normally clean my bucket out, wash it out, make sure there's no powder left in it. I might clean it with like a food grade hydrogen peroxide and run some of that through the hose, and then I usually run some boiling hot water through the hose too. You can remove the tip and wipe that down with like a peroxide as well, rinse it out. I would sometimes keep a little jar with hydrogen peroxide in it and put it in there to disinfect it. Nowadays it's a piece of cake. I do remember when it was intimidating, but I am so glad that I did it because it's one of the tools that I continue to fall back on. I do them at least once a week now, and when I'm doing a cleanse, then I might do it every day for a few days and then take a break. But I have noticed a significant difference primarily in my mental health, not just with the anxiety and depression, but like I said, the biggest thing I noticed was the relief from brain fog. Let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, I will post links to everything, and I'll make sure to list out the things that I have tried in my enemas and why. And I hope that you find this helpful.